The New York City Subway has 25 services and 472 stations. And 3 months ago, I attempted to ride every single numbered line plus the 42nd Street Shuttle. Today, I will attempt to ride the B Division, aka the lettered lines of the New York City Subway. But since there are a ton of lettered lines, I will take the IND lines, or the trains going from A through G, plus the Rockaway Park Shuttle. Without further ado, let's go to Inwood to start my journey. So starting off at Inwood, we are here to take the A train, and by a request of Christian Laverick, I will time this journey because the A train is the longest train service in the entire system at 31 miles. My first impressions of the A train is that the frequencies are just plain awful. Like, you're asking me to wait 7 minutes during rush hour for a train? No thank you. I'll take the 1 train instead. Anyway, we left Inwood and arrived at different stations along the Inwood branch. Just like the 1 train, these stations are extremely deep. But unlike the 1 train, where you can only access certain stations by elevator, the A train stations here have a ton of stairs for you to use. We got to 168th Street, and here the express service starts. And the speed is okay. Not too bad, but not too good either. We got to 145th Street, where we merged with the Concourse line. And at 125th Street, we started the 7-stop long express run. And again, the speed was not too good, nor too bad. It was passable. And I had that to say for the entire express run in Manhattan. We head into Brooklyn, and the speed here is also passable, though it is slightly faster than the express in Manhattan. We got to Euclid Avenue, the last station before the express run ends, and after Grant Avenue, the train goes onto an elevated structure. And after Rockaway Boulevard, this is where the A train branches. Since I am on an A train heading to Rockaway, we will be taking the Far Rockaway branch, not the Lefferts branch, though I will show you that journey later. Anyway, the A train now runs on the old structure that the LIRR used to run on. And after Howard Beach, the next station is in 3.5 miles. This makes it the longest distance between any 2 stations on the network, and rivals the 7-stop long express run that the A train took earlier. We got to Broad Channel, and then the Rockaway branch splits once again, with one heading to Far Rockaway and the other heading to Rockaway Park. Since this A train is heading to Far Rockaway, the train turns east, and we are at Beach 67th Street. The elevated stations are way nicer here. And not only do these elevated viaducts look nicer, the viaduct does a good job muffling noise from trains. We get a nice view of the Rockaway coastline in a dense development in the Rockaways before the A ends at Mott Avenue. And according to this countdown clock, we spent over an hour and 30 minutes on this train. That is a very long ride, which goes to show the insane length of the A train. We're going to head back north and take the Lefferts branch of the A train. The Lefferts branch is just 3 stations, so the ride was pretty quick. Here is the track diverging away to the Rockaways, and here is the abandoned Rockaway Beach branch. And here is 104th Street. And then here is us leaving 111th Street, and here is us arriving at Lefferts Boulevard. Now that we took the entirety of the A train, here are my scores. Speed is going to be 7.5. It is just average. I won't complain, but I won't be impressed either. Comfort is going to be an 8. Those smooth sections in the Rockaways definitely helped. Usefulness is an obvious 9. The A connects to so many densely populated neighborhoods. Frequency is going to be 5.5. You are telling me to wait 7 minutes during peak times for a train? Then how long are Lefferts and Rockaway residents waiting? As useful of a line the A is, it is honestly sad to see it run horrible frequencies. My final score for the A train is a 30 out of 40. While I was in the Rockaways, I decided to take the Rockaway Park Shuttle. And yeah, I had to wait 10 minutes for a Rockaway Park Shuttle, which is horrible. After an eternity, the shuttle finally arrived. We are now taking the other way of the Rockaway line, and there are a ton of dense developments here, just like the Far Rockaway branch of the A train. But Beach 105th Street is somewhat interesting, as it is located on a waste treatment facility. Yes, there are developments here, but the main catchment area seems to be that sewage plant. Combined with that horrible frequency, this is probably why Beach 105th Street is the least used station in the entire system. We got to Rockaway Park, the last stop on the line. Here are my scores for the Rockaway Park shuttle. Speed is just average, so I'm just going to put a 7. It is a pretty smooth ride, so 8. For usefulness, I feel like the shuttle ending at Broad Channel limits its usefulness, as you are making passengers transfer onto an A train that runs every 15 minutes here. The real solution is Queenslink, as it doubles capacity to Rockaway residents. But for the time being, I feel like ending the shuttle at Rockaway Boulevard would be a good choice, as one can have better frequencies because this station is where the A train branches off. But I am not sure if Rockaway Boulevard could handle an additional 6 trains per hour, so I'm just going to let you all decide. But enough rambling, I give it a 6 out of 10. Finally, frequency is just 4 out of 10. A 10-minute wait during rush hour is just horrible. So the Rockaway Park shuttle gets a 25 out of 40. I then took an A train to Euclid Avenue to take the C train, and the frequency for a C train is apparently every 10 minutes. Again, that is just bad. And as the Fulton Street line gets more developments, making more and more riders wait 10 minutes is just not good policy. Anyway, we're out of Euclid Avenue, and the C speed is just okay. It is just your typical train making stops, though the C is slightly slower than the A because it doesn't have the option of skipping stops. We got out of Brooklyn and entered Manhattan. Nothing much happens here, though the train started getting a bit more crowded. We got to the Central Park West portion of 8th Avenue, and the stations are double stacked because of Central Park. And at 103rd Street, the station is widened so that you can see the lower level of the station. We got to 125th Street, then 135th Street, where there are 6 tracks. We made more stops, and finally, the last stop is 168th Street. Here are my scores for the C. Speed is just 6 out of 10. It is a slower version of the A train. That's all. Comfort. It is alright. 7 out of 10. The C is the local version of the A train, as it makes stops that the A will not make. And those stops are located in either dense northern Manhattan or the quickly gentrifying Fulton Street corridor. Therefore, it is useful. So, 8. Frequency is just 4 out of 10. Like a 10-minute wait for a C train, I will pass. The final score for the C is a 24 out of 40. I then head to 145th Street to take the B train, and yeah, those frequencies are not good. I think that these low frequencies will be a recurring theme that I won't appreciate. And starting off, it is just like the C train, but slower. Like when I was filming this, I have been riding trains for a while, and it is just painful seeing the stops go by. Anyway, that local run will not last for long, because the B train would head its way down the 6th Avenue line. And the express on the 6th Avenue line, in my opinion, is pretty underrated, especially on this southbound track. Here, the train goes insanely fast, and although you won't save much time, it is still very refreshing to see lights go by at a lightning pace. We got to West 4th Street, and at Broadway Lafayette Street, we separated from the 6th Avenue line to head down to the BMT Southern Division. Once we left Grand Street, we got onto the Manhattan Bridge. I think that the Manhattan Bridge is way too slow for my taste, but I understand that it needs to be slow because of the scary downgrades that the bridge contains. Also, it is nice to enjoy the skylines of Brooklyn and Manhattan. We got to DeKalb Junction, and before anyone tries to pin me for my pronunciation, just know that the MTA's own announcements call it this way. Anyway, the train decided to slow down to a trickle before starting up again. This is why we need to de-interline DeKalb. We made a few more stops in Brooklyn, and once we got to Prospect Park, the fun part began. The B operates express on Brighton, and it is fun seeing the stops go by. And the train actually has some good speed. That is a recipe for success here, though I think the B could definitely go faster here. But fun times don't last forever, as the B is cut short at Brighton Beach. My scores for the B. Speed is an 8 out of 10. Really impressed me with the speeds on 6th Avenue and Brighton. Comfort is a 7 out of 10. It is just average. Usefulness. The B is very useful as it connects so many neighborhoods, but I just don't like the express ending before the local, as it should be the other way around. So I'll give it a 7. Frequency is just a 6.5 out of 10. The wait times for the B is just horrible, but at least it isn't as bad as the C, as the B runs every 8 minutes or so. So my final score for the B is a 28.5 out of 40. I then went to Coney Island to take the D train. And yeah, those frequencies aren't looking too hot either. Like a train every 6 minutes during peak time, but it was 8 minutes right now because of some reason. I got onto that train and waited extremely long for that train to leave. Once that train left, we were on the West End line. The West End line is just the Jerome Avenue line in the Bronx. It is just your typical train making stops, though the West End line was filled with a ton of twists and turns. Anyway, after 9th Avenue, we ended up on this long tunnel and we got to 36th Street on the 4th Avenue line. Here the train goes pretty fast and we end up at Atlantic in no time. And after Atlantic, guess what? DeKalb Junction. And the train just took a nap here. I said it once and I'll say it again. The Interline, DeKalb. There is no reason why the junction should be this complicated. We then made our way over the bridge with a scenic view before ending up at Grand Street. Honestly, other than that express run, 6th Avenue wasn't too memorable. A 6 turned into an 8 once we reached 59th Street, and we got to skip like 7 stations. We made it to 125th Street, and after 145th Street, we split off to head via Concourse. We got lucky and a D went express here. The speed was good for a while, then devolved to an okay speed for the rest of the 5-stop express run. We arrived at Tremont Avenue, skipped 182nd and 183rd Streets, and ended up at Fordham Road. Fast forward the next few stops and we are leaving Bedford Park Boulevard. The final stop is Norwood, 205th Street, and unlike the other terminal stations so far, I know exactly where the train is going to end up. Since the switch to reverse trains isn't built before the station, trains would enter into the northern bound direction, exit, and reverse after the Norwood station. This means that I won't be frantically running to the other side of the train if the train switches, which is nice. And here we are at Norwood. My score is for the D train. Speed is just an 8, just like the B train. Good speed, but it can be faster. The D train is overall a comfortable ride, except if you're on West End and see all those twists and turns. I will still give it a 7. The D train is still useful as it connects to so many neighborhoods, so 9 out of 10. The frequency is not very good, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. The final score for the D train is a 31 out of 40. I then went to the World Trade Center station to take the E train, and starting off, those frequencies are looking much better than the D train, like every 4 to 5 minutes, which is nice. The E left World Trade Center station, and for the first few stations, it was alright. Nothing too interesting, just your typical local train making stops. But I will say that the 50th Street station represents IND overbuilding pretty well. Instead of a 4-track layout, with 2 tracks leading into the IND Queens Boulevard line, we got an entire lower level dedicated to QBL trains. We left the 8th Avenue line and went under 53rd Street, and right after 5th Avenue, we merged with the M train. We then left Manhattan and entered Queens. The E made a stop at Court Square and Queens Plaza. Here the M branches off from the E, and the F will emerge from the 63rd Street tunnel, which is a merging nightmare. As I am recording this, the F is rerouted via the 53rd Street tunnel because of track work, and I really think that this should be permanent. Although this isn't the grand de-interlining scheme I proposed under the IND 76th Street tunnel video, this partial de-interline is a great step to reduce merging conflicts. Anyway, we travel at a very restricted speed on the E, and after skipping 36th Street, we speed up. We make great speed, but we slow to a crawl at 65th Street. As someone who takes QBL occasionally, this is the one feature of QBL that I don't like. The express train always slows to a crawl right before an express station. And to add insult to injury, you can always see the local trains passing by. I think that this is because of the numerous merging conflicts on QBL and how if one train enters the line at the wrong time, a backup will occur. And that seems to be an everyday problem, despite CBTC being activated on this section. So to all of you interlining advocates that claim CBTC solves interlining, take QBL during rush hour. We got to Roosevelt Avenue and a ton of people get off. We then skipped the next 5 stations, and the same thing happened, where the train made some good speed, then proceeded to slow down at 67th Avenue. And after an eternity, we finally arrived at Forest Hills. After Forest Hills, the train slowed down, then sped up, and we skipped 75th Avenue with some decent speed. And after stopping at Union Turnpike and skipping Briarwood, we head down the Archer Avenue line. We made a stop at Jamaica Van Wyck, and at Stuffin Boulevard, we are held in the station because Jamaica Center is just a horrible terminal. And finally, after an eternity of waiting, we pull out of Stuffin Boulevard and into Jamaica Center. Here are my scores for the E train. The speed is just a 5. Way too many delays here. The E is a pretty comfortable train, so 7.5 out of 10. The E is an insanely useful route, as it serves a ton of dense neighborhoods on its route, so 9.5 out of 10. Finally, the E's frequencies is just okay, so I give it a 7.5 out of 10. My final score for the E is 29.5 out of 40. My next train will have to be the F train, and starting off, these F frequencies are just okay, like every 4 to 5 minutes. But the F can pull tricks, where you have a train in 3 minutes, then the next one is in 19 minutes. But today is a good day for the F, so I will show it some mercy for frequencies. We left 179th Street and we made stops along QBL. Nothing too interesting here. Once we got to 75th Avenue, we merged onto the express track. And here we began our fun. And unlike the E, the F goes insanely fast here. It is probably because I am not taking this F train during peak times. We got to Roosevelt Avenue where a bunch of people board the train and we continue skipping stops. And right after 36th Street, we branched off and entered the 63rd Street Tunnel. The 63rd Street Tunnel is not as loud as other subway lines, as it opened in 1989. So it featured a bunch of new technology that muffled the noise of trains. We left Queens, made an intermediate stop on Roosevelt Island, and entered Manhattan. We then made our way downtown on the 6th Avenue line. Nothing too unusual, just your typical local train making stops. We parted ways with the B, D, and M trains. And after East Broadway, we left Manhattan and entered Brooklyn. And now, the real slow section starts. The F makes all stops in Brooklyn, and there are 22 of them. Well, give me like an hour. After J Street Metrotech, we are on the Culver Line. Nothing interesting happens except Smith 9th Street Station. Basically, this station was the tallest in the world for over 90 years, until a station in Chongqing, China, took its spot. Why is this station so tall? It is because of tall ships entering the Gowanus Canal, though they are no longer an issue anymore. Anyway, we enter back into a tunnel after 4th Avenue, 9th Street, and 7th Avenue is actually at a higher elevation than the elevated 4th Avenue, 9th Street. We slowly make our way down Park Slope, and after Church Avenue, we are going back elevated. Remember the old Culver Shuttle? Well, here's a structure that belonged to the shuttle right before Ditmas Avenue, and that ran to 9th Avenue on the D train. And yeah, the rest of the Culver Line is just your typical train making stops, though at Avenue X, we see the mighty Coney Island Yard. Once we get to the southern coastline of Brooklyn, we sharply curve under the Brighton Line and enter West 8th Street, and we got held there for the next 5 minutes. Which goes to show how bad Coney Island is as a terminal. We slowly make our way to Coney Island, and finally, the doors open. My scores for the F train. Speed is just really mixed. If you're in Queens, it is a 50-50 chance that you get a fast train. But if you're in Brooklyn, the speeds are just slow, and I recommend you taking the N train nearby. 6.5 out of 10. The F is comfortable in Queens, but once you're in Brooklyn, you're subjected to numerous twists and turns. I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. The F is a very useful line in Queens, though in Brooklyn, the elevated section gets almost zero ridership. I will give it a 7.5 out of 10. Finally, the F's frequency, I'll just give it a 7. If I was hit with those typical F train frequencies, it will be an instant 4.5 out of 10. But I guess it is the F's lucky day. My final score for the F is a 27.5 out of 40. I then head back on the F to Church Avenue and take the G train. And yeah, the frequencies aren't so good. During rush hours, it is 6 minutes, but other times are 10 minutes. Not cool. The G on Culver is literally the same as the F train, so I'm just going to skip that. After Bergen Street, the real fun begins, as we are now on the section the G is known for, the crosstown line. The G makes some good speed, and it helps that these stations, with the exception of some, are placed reasonably well. Another feature of the crosstown line in Brooklyn is that every station just looks the same, your typical 2 tracks with side platforms, except for Bedford Nostrand Avenues. This station was built with 3 tracks and 2 island platforms, because the provisions of building out a Winfield Central Avenue subway line did not go through because of the Great Depression. The speed of the G is good, and within no time, we leave Greenpoint Avenue and enter Queens. We are held at 21st Street for a little bit before we end up at our stop, Court Square. My score for the G. Speed is just 8.5 out of 10. It is just like the 1 train after 145th Street. Fast, despite it making every stop. The G is an overall comfortable ride, so 8 out of 10. The G is obviously very useful, as it is the only line that runs between Brooklyn and Queens without going through Manhattan. Though the G is very hard to access because of a lot of missing transfers. But I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Finally, the frequency is just a complete joke, like 1 every 6 to 10 minutes. It is bad because the G is a pretty useful line, yet it does not get much service. Combined with the fact that the G is only 5 cars long, as opposed to 10-car trains, the G gets pretty crowded. So, my score for frequency is 6 out of 10. The final score for the G is 31 out of 40. My final train is the F Express. And yeah, those are just extremely limited. If you don't catch the first one, the next one is in like 20 minutes. And after that, well, you just gotta wait until the next day. So the frequency is a complete joke. Anyway, I caught an F Express, and the F Express is just like the F train in Queens and Manhattan, so I'll just skip it. The real fun begins after J Street, and we switch onto the express track. We whiz by the Bergen Street lower level, and at Carroll Street, we start gaining elevation. The train turns at Smith 9th Streets, and skips 4th Avenue. We made a stop at 7th Avenue, and now we are taking a shortcut under Prospect Park so that this train is even faster. Gotta love the cleverness of the IND engineers. We arrive at Church Avenue, but what happens next is pretty interesting. The F Express train continues to skip Ditmas Avenue, and made a stop at 18th Avenue. It then proceeded to skip the next 4th station, which was pretty nice. Though at Avenue N, the train slowed down. We switched back to the local track at Kings Highway, and everything is pretty much the same with a regular F train. We got to Coney Island, the last stop, and here are my scores for the F Express. Speed is an 8.5 out of 10. The Express has some decent speed, especially whizzing through the Bergen Street lower level. The F Express is more comfortable as it has fewer twists and turns, so I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. The F Express has its own uses. On the one hand, it should skip more stations so that it is a true express. But skipping more stations limits the overall usefulness of the line, as the F Express already skips the majority of Culver riders. I'm just going to give it a 5 out of 10. Finally, the frequencies of this train is just so rare. Like, this is some limited time edition, and if you don't catch it, it will be gone forever. 1 out of 10. The final score for the F Express is 22 out of 40. And with that, this marks the end of this video. So this is pretty interesting. No IND route is able to top my beloved 7 Express train. It is usually because 10-minute waits are so common here, or speeds being so slow. Not to say that the IRT is immune from these, but one thing to note is that the IRT has more deinterlined parts baked into its system. That in turn increases speeds and frequencies. Anyway, these are obviously my opinion of each train, and you can disagree with me. But if you do, please let me know your thoughts on any train here. The BMT will come sometime in the future, so stay tuned for that. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.